The rain hammered against the towering glass walls of the penthouse ballroom, a glistening fortress suspended above Chicago's jagged skyline. Each drop seemed to pulse with the city's restless energy, mirroring the tension brewing inside. The room buzzed with the delicate clink of champagne flutes and the low, self-satisfied hum of laughter from the city's elite. Men in impeccably tailored tuxedos, their cufflinks flashing like tiny stars, and women draped in diamonds that caught the chandelier's golden glow. They moved through the space like predators, their eyes sharp with privilege, their conversations laced with the casual arrogance of those who believe they own the world. At the heart of it all stood Victor Langston, a real estate titan whose empire stretched across the city like a spider's web. His smirk was as sharp as the creases in his $5,000 suit, his presence commanding the room like a king holding court. Tonight was his annual gala, a spectacle of wealth so extravagant it could choke the very air. But the true performance, the one Victor had orchestrated with a cruel chuckle over his morning coffee, was about to step through the door. The double door swung open with a slow, deliberate creak, and the room fell silent, as if the air itself had been sucked out. A woman entered, her heels striking the polished marble floor with the precision of a metronome. She was black, her skin radiant under the chandelier's warm light, her crimson gown clinging to her curves in a way that demanded attention without begging for it. The crowd stirred, whispers rippling like a stone dropped in still water. "Who is she?" a woman in a sapphire necklace hissed to her companion. "Is that the cleaning lady?" another voice muttered, disbelief laced with mockery. Victor's lips curled into a grin, his eyes glinting with malicious delight. He'd invited her, Amara Jones, the woman who scrubbed his office floors at Langston Enterprises, as a joke, a vicious prank to amuse his guests and reinforce the invisible line between them and the help. He'd pictured her shuffling in, awkward in a borrowed dress, her head bowed under the weight of their stares. But Amara didn't look like she was here to clean. She moved with the grace of a queen, her chin high, her eyes sharp enough to slice through steel. In her hand, she clutched a sleek black purse, its content a mystery that sent a shiver of unease down Victor's spine. The crowd parted, their whispers turning to gasps, their phones already creeping out to capture the moment. Victor raised his glass, his voice poised to deliver the first jab, but something in Amara's gaze stopped him cold. A quiet, unyielding fire that said she wasn't here to play his game. She was here to burn it to the ground. Amara Jones was invisible most days, a shadow moving through the gleaming offices of Langston Enterprises. At 34, her hands bore the calluses of years spent wielding mops and bleach, her dreams tucked away in a worn leather notebook she kept in her pocket, its pages filled with notes scrawled in stolen moments. To Victor, she was nothing, a faceless figure who emptied trash cans and polished desks while he brokered million-dollar deals in glass-walled boardrooms. But Amara was more than her apron, more than the tired stereotypes he pinned to her. She was a woman who'd memorized every contract carelessly left on his desk, who'd spent her nights poring over corporate law textbooks in the dim light of her small apartment, who'd clawed her way through a world that tried to break her at every turn. Her calm was not weakness. It was a weapon, honed over years of enduring slights and dismissals. Her silence was not submission. It was strategy, a quiet gathering of strength for the moment she'd choose to strike. Victor Langston, at 52, was Chicago's golden boy, a man who'd built his empire on charm, cunning, and a ruthless willingness to crush anyone in his path. His annual gala was his throne room, a glittering stage where he played king, and his guests bowed to his power. He thrived on control, on the thrill of making others feel small, especially those he deemed beneath him, like Amara. Inviting her was his latest amusement, a cruel whim born over a glass of scotch with his inner circle. "Let's see how the cleaning lady handles a real party," he'd said, his laughter echoed by his loyal PR manager, Claire Hensley, who typed Amara's name onto the guest list with a smirk. But Victor didn't know Amara. He didn't know the fire she'd been stoking in silence, the years she'd spent watching, listening, and preparing for a moment just like this. The crowd was a tapestry of Chicago's power players, bankers with egos as inflated as their portfolios, lawyers who twisted words like knives, socialites whose smiles hid their disdain. Claire Hensley, Victor's icy right hand, stood near the bar, her blonde hair pulled into a severe chignon, her eyes scanning the room for any threat to her boss's image. She'd laugh hardest at the idea of inviting Amara, picturing the woman's humiliation as a perfect anecdote for the next board meeting. But there was another figure in the room, quieter, less ostentatious. Marcus Tate, a venture capitalist with a reputation for fairness, who lingered at the edges of the crowd, his brow furrowed as he watched Amara's entrance, sensing something Victor and Claire had missed, a shift in the air, like the first crack of thunder before a storm. Victor stepped forward, his voice slicing through the murmurs like a blade. "Well, well," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Miss Jones, you actually showed up. I must say, you clean up adequately." The crowd tittered, their laughter a chorus of cruelty, each chuckle a reminder of the hierarchy they all upheld. Amara didn't flinch. She tilted her head, her lips curving into a smile that was both polite and laced with danger, like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Thank you, Mr. Langston," she said, her voice smooth as silk, carrying a weight that made the room lean in. "I'm honored to be here. Truly." The word truly landed like a challenge, and a few guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing the undercurrent of her words. The room waited for her to crumble, to shrink under the weight of their stares. But Amara glided toward the bar, her crimson gown trailing behind her like a scarlet flame. Claire leaned toward Victor, her voice a low hiss. "She's got nerve. Let's see how long it lasts." Victor nodded, his eyes narrowing as he sipped his champagne. 10 minutes, he muttered. "She'll run." But Amara didn't run. She ordered a drink, a martini dry, with a twist, her movements deliberate, her gaze sweeping the room like a general surveying a battlefield. A banker approached her, his tie slightly askew, his tone dripping with patronizing curiosity. "So, you're the help who got an invite?" he said, his smirk inviting the crowd to laugh. Amara turned to him, her eyes locking onto his with a calm that made his grin falter. "I'm Amara," she said simply. "And you are—" The question was polite but pointed, and the banker stammered, retreating with a mumbled apology. The crowd's whispers shifted, a new note creeping in, curiosity, tinged with unease. Victor's amusement was fading. He crossed the room, his presence looming like a storm cloud. "Enjoying yourself, Amara?" he asked, his voice loud enough to draw every eye in the room. "This isn't exactly your usual environment." The jab landed, and the crowd leaned in, hungry for her response, expecting her to falter. Amara met his gaze, her expression unshaken, her voice steady. "Oh, I'm quite comfortable, Victor," she said, the use of his first name hitting like a slap. A few guests gasped, their champagne flutes pausing midair. Victor's smile tightened, his knuckles whitening around his glass. "Careful," he said, his voice low but sharp. "You're playing a dangerous game." Amara didn't blink. She reached into her clutch, pulling out a small embossed card, its edges crisp and professional. "I brought something for you," she said, handing it to him with a smile that was both gracious and lethal. Victor took it, his brow furrowing as he read the text. Amara Jones, J.D., corporate attorney. The room seemed to tilt, the air growing heavy with anticipation. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice low but sharp, the first crack in his composure. Amara's smile didn't waver. "Just a little something I've been working on," she said. "Shall we discuss it?" Victor laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound that echoed through the room. "A lawyer?" "You," he said, his voice thick with disbelief. "Don't insult my intelligence, Amara." He tossed the card onto a nearby table, its landing loud in the sudden silence. But Marcus Tate, who'd been watching from the sidelines, stepped forward and picked it up. His eyes widened as he read it, his voice cutting through the tension. "This is from Harvard Law," he said, holding the card up for the crowd to see. The murmurs grew louder, a wave of shock rippling through the room. Victor's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with anger. "A fake," he snapped. "She's a cleaner, Marcus. Don't be naive." Amara's calm was unshakable. "Check the records, Victor," she said, her voice steady, each word deliberate. "I graduated last year, top of my class." She paused, letting the words sink in, her gaze never leaving his. "While I was cleaning your offices, I was also studying your contracts, your deals, your mistakes. The word mistakes hung in the air like a guillotine, sharp and heavy. Victor's face paled, but he recovered quickly, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. Cute story, he said, but you're out of your depth. Marcus stepped forward again, his phone in hand, his expression serious. I just checked, he said, his voice carrying the weight of truth. She's telling the truth. Amara Jones, admitted to the Illinois bar 6 months ago. The crowd erupted in whispers, their eyes darting between Amara and Victor, the balance of power shifting like sand under their feet. Claire, sensing the tide turning, tried to intervene, her voice sharp but unsteady. This is absurd, she said, stepping forward. She's playing you all. But Amara's calm was a fortress, unyielding. She reached into her clutch again, pulling out a folder, its edges crisp, its contents heavy with intent. Victor, she said, her voice low but commanding, I think you'll want to see this before you say anything else. Amara opened the folder, revealing a stack of documents stamped with official seals, their weight evident in the way they thudded against the table. These, she said, her voice steady but laced with steel, are records of your company's recent land deals, specifically the ones you pushed through in Bronzeville. The room went silent, the air thick with tension, as if the chandelier itself held its breath. Bronzeville, a historically black neighborhood, had been the target of Victor's aggressive gentrification projects, deals that displaced families, shuttered small businesses, and sparked protests that echoed through the city's streets. Victor's smile vanished, his face a mask of barely contained fury. You don't know what you're talking about, he hissed, his voice low but trembling with rage. Amara pressed on, her voice rising just enough to command the room, each word a precise strike. Oh, I do, she said. I've read every contract, every email. I know about the zoning violations, the forged signatures, the bribes to city officials. And I have proof. She held up a USB drive, its sleek black surface glinting under the chandelier, like a weapon drawn in battle. This contains everything. Emails, recordings, financial trails. Enough to put Langston Enterprises under federal investigation. The crowd gasped, their phones already out, recording the scene, their whispers turning to a roar. Victor's face was a storm of fury and fear, his voice betraying a tremor. You're bluffing, he said, but the words lacked conviction. Amara stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his, unyielding. Am I? She said, her voice soft but deadly. I've spent years cleaning your floors, Victor. Listening, watching. You thought I was invisible, but I saw everything. And now, so will the world. Marcus Tate stepped forward, his expression grim but resolute. She's not bluffing, Victor, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. I've seen some of these documents. They're real, and they're damning. Claire's face drained of color, her tablet slipping from her hands and clattering to the floor. The crowd was no longer Victor's. They were Amara's, hanging on her every word, their phones capturing the moment that would soon flood the internet. Amara didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The room was hers, and Victor knew it, his empire crumbling in the silence that followed her words. You invited me here to humiliate me, she said, her voice cutting through the stillness like a blade, to remind me of my place. But you forgot something, Victor. My place isn't beneath you. It's in front of you, holding you accountable. She turned to the crowd, her gaze sweeping over them, her presence commanding their respect. This isn't just about me. It's about every person you've stepped on, every community you've torn apart. Tonight, that ends. Victor opened his mouth to speak, but no words came, his jaw working uselessly as the weight of her words crushed him. Amara handed the USB drive to Marcus, who nodded solemnly. I'll make sure this gets to the right people, he said, his voice firm. The crowd erupted in applause, their phones still recording, their voices rising in a wave of support that drowned out Victor's world. Claire tried to salvage the situation, stepping forward with a forced smile that trembled at the edges. This is a misunderstanding, she said, her voice shaking, her eyes darting to Victor for support that never came. We'll handle this internally. But Amara cut her off, her voice calm but final. No, Claire, she said. This isn't internal. This is public. And it's just the beginning. The crowd roared, their cheers a tidal wave that swept away Claire's protests, their phones capturing the moment that would define the night. The next morning, the story broke like a thunderclap across Chicago. Headlines screamed from every newsstand and screen. Real estate mogul exposed by former cleaner turned attorney. The content of Mara's USB drive had been leaked to the press, triggering investigations by the FBI and the city's ethics board. Langston Enterprises' stock plummeted, its offices swarmed by reporters and investigators. Victor faced a barrage of lawsuits, his name synonymous with corruption. Claire resigned in disgrace, her career shattered, her name a footnote in the scandal. The gala, meant to be Victor's crowning moment, became his downfall the night Chicago's elite learned the cost of underestimating their help. Amara didn't gloat. She stood outside the courthouse, her crimson gown replaced by a sharp navy blazer, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the city skyline met the dawn. She'd taken a job with a nonprofit dedicated to housing justice, using her law degree to protect the communities Victor had targeted, Bronzeville, Englewood, and beyond. The people of Bronzeville rallied behind her, their signs reading, Amara Jones, our voice, their voices chanting her name in the streets. She didn't seek the spotlight, but it found her, her story inspiring the city to rethink who holds power and who deserves it. Victor, meanwhile, sat alone in his penthouse, the city's lights mocking him to the rain-streaked windows. His empire was unraveling, his name dragged to the mud, his legacy reduced to a cautionary tale. All he could see was Amara's face, her calm strength burning brighter than his wealth ever could, her voice echoing in his mind. You thought I was invisible. He'd underestimated her, and now he paid the price, his world crumbling under the weight of her truth. The rain had stopped, and Chicago's skyline gleamed under a rare, clear dawn, the city reborn in the light of a new day. Amara's story wasn't just about one woman's triumph over a cruel prank. It was about every invisible soul who'd been underestimated, dismissed, or mocked. Every person who'd been told they didn't belong, only to prove they were unstoppable. It was about the power of resilience, the unyielding weight of truth, and the courage to stand tall when the world tries to make you small. Her victory wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, a reminder that no one is truly invisible and no empire is untouchable. Amara didn't just expose Victor Langston. She exposed a system that thrives on inequality, a system that assumes people like her can't fight back. But they can, and they will. This wasn't about one gala, one USB drive, or one night. It was about every night like it, every fight like hers, and every voice waiting to be heard, rising together to demand a better world. If Amara's story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories that matter, stories that remind us. The truth always finds a way.